papers soon.
See you then. Looking forward to it.
Right, let's move on now, because the Costa Book of the Year will be announced later tonight at a ceremony in London. The shortlist includes a first novel, a memoir, poetry, fiction and a children's book. And Rebecca Jones is at the awards ceremony for us tonight. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi Clive, and welcome to the first big literary awards ceremony of 2017, where in the next hour and a half we will find out who has won the Costa Book of the Year. What's unique about this prize is that it showcases the whole of contemporary writing. So there's a category for best novel, best first novel, best children's book, best collection of poetry and best biography. Now the winners of those individual categories have already been decided. So what's at stake tonight is which one of those five will be named the overall Book of the Year. Well, for her thoughts and insights, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the writer and the critic, Alex Clark.
Hello.
Welcome, Alex.
Hi.
What do you make of this year's shortlist?
I thought it was a really exceptional shortlist this year, and that came out of several exceptionally good shortlists as well. So when you finally boiled it down to the winners, it was really high quality. Sebastian Barry, Days Without End, and Francis Spofford, Golden Hill, lead that sort of fiction category. And of course they are both heavily historical novels, but they broaden out so strongly into a sort of contemporary life.
It does seem to me that the judges have an almost impossible task. I mean, how do you compare a collection of poetry like Falling Awake by Alice Oswald with a biography, Kegi Caru's Dadland?
I suppose all books live inside you to some or other extent. And if they do so successfully, if they take you to other places, if they connect you to the world through thought and language, then I guess that's a successful book. And in a sense, people always have this objection to the Costas, and I understand it, but I also think, in a way, all book competitions are comparing apples and pears. It's about that sort of joy of language and the joy of ideas.
Did you have a favourite?
I am deeply, deeply impressed by and fond of Sebastian Barry's Days Without End, but I thought they were all exceptional books.
How much do you think this prize influences the books that people actually go out and read?
Well, there's always this argument with all book prizes. It's certainly up there with things like the Booker Prize, the Bailey's Prize, the Nobel, obviously. It's always difficult to say, but I think this has always been a very outward-facing prize since when it was the Whitbread Prize. It's always been interested in sort of connecting with readers from a very broad spectrum.
Well, we will find out who has won. Alex Clark, for now, thank you very much. And we will bring you the announcement of the winner live here on a special programme on the BBC News Channel, and that's at 8:15, so stay with us for that.
Now, the Costa Book of the Year will be announced later tonight at a ceremony here in London. The shortlist includes a first novel, a memoir, poetry, fiction and a children's book. And Rebecca Jones is at the award ceremony for us tonight. Hi there, Rebecca.
Hi, Clive, and well, it's getting pretty lively here. The 300 guests are enjoying their champagne and canapes as they await the announcement of the Costa Book of the Year. What's unique about this prize is that it showcases the whole of contemporary writing. So there are categories for the best novel, the best first novel, the best children's book, the best collection of poetry and the best biography. Now, each of the winners of those categories are here tonight, and they are now nervously waiting to find out if they've been picked as the overall Book of the Year. So let's remind ourselves who's on the shortlist.
The winner of the First Novel Prize is Francis Spofford for his book Golden Hill. It's set in the 1740s in the early days of New York. When a stranger arrives there, he finds a world of opportunity and trouble. The Biography Award went to Dadland by Kegi Caru. It follows her quest to find out more about her father's experiences in the Second World War. But she gets more than she bargained for as one by one his secrets are revealed. Falling Awake won the Poetry Award for Alice Oswald. The poems are designed to be read aloud and reflect on life, death and the power of nature, as well as Greek myths. The previous Costa Book of the Year winner Sebastian Barry took the Novel Award for Days Without End. After signing up for the American Army in the 1850s, two young men fall in love while caught up in the chaos of war. And in The Bombs That Brought Us Together, the Children's Book Award winner, written by Brian Conahan, a teenage adventure takes the spotlight. It's a tale of two friends faced with a terrible choice in a dystopian world.
So those are the books, but who is going to win? Well, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by one of the judges, the writer, broadcaster and presenter, Graham Norton. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Have you judged a book prize before?
I have not, but I do read a lot. So I just came to it as someone who enjoys reading. And that, in my head, was how I was judging the books. Which one I enjoyed the most, which one I'd recommend to friends.
As I say, you're a writer. You've written 2 autobiographies, don't roll your eyes, and a novel. I wondered how much your experiences as a writer influenced your approach as a judge.
I think, having written a novel, it makes you far more sympathetic, I think, because you know how much goes into it. And the 2 novels are exceptional, the 3 novels are exceptional, and the memoir and the poetry. I have to say, this was such a pleasure, because when I said yes, I didn't know what the winners were, and you think, oh, what am I going to have to plough through? And in fact, all 5 were a delight.
It seems to me, though, judging this prize is particularly difficult because you are choosing between such very different books. Was it difficult?
It is difficult because some of them are kind of less immersive and less involving than the others. But I think in the end, what we talked about was what was the book of the year. You know, so in a way, you're not comparing them. You're judging them as individual books and going, is that my book of the year?
So take me inside the jury room. I understand you deliberated for about an hour and a half. Were there violent disagreements?
There were. It was interesting. There was one book that 2 people loathed, like really hated, and there was one book that one person absolutely, she thought it was the new Bible. So, and the rest of us, I think, were pretty middle groundy, because I think certainly of the 5, I would have been very happy with 4 of them as winners.
How did it compare to judging for Eurovision? Did it go on political lines, national lines?
It's a very different thing. You know, I think tonight's winner will be less surprising than the winner often is at Eurovision. Eurovision, you cannot second guess Eurovision. You can probably second guess which of these is going to win.
Did you have a favourite that you're prepared to share with me?
Of these?
Yes.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, go on.
All right. Am I?
Yeah, go on.
Well, okay. My 2 favourites were Golden Hill and Dadland.
Right. What is that?
Dadland is an extraordinary memoir about written by a woman about her father who has severe Alzheimer's, and she's piecing together this amazing life he had, where he was dropped in to be with the French resistance and then fought with Burmese rebels. An amazing book, and Golden Hill is just a great romp.
Yes, absolutely, a rollicking good read. Well, we will see if you got your way. Graham Norton, so grateful. Thank you for coming to talk to us. And we will bring you the announcement of the winner live here in a special programme on the BBC News channel at 8:15, so stay with us for that.
Rebecca, look forward to that. Rebecca Jones reporting there. Now, the Costa Book of the Year will be announced in the next few minutes at a ceremony in London. The shortlist for the prize includes a first novel, a memoir, poetry, fiction and a children's book. Well, Rebecca Jones is at the ceremony in central London for us tonight. Rebecca, is everyone excited? It's almost upon us.
It's almost upon us, as you say, Clive. Welcome to Quaglino's restaurant here in central London, where in the next few minutes we will find out who has won the Costa Book of the Year. The awards ceremony has already started behind me. The category winners are going up on stage to receive their prize, and that's what's unique about this prize, is that there are separate categories for novel, first novel, children's book, collection of poetry and biography. Now, the winners of those categories have already been decided. So what's at stake this evening is which one of those 5 books will be named overall Book of the Year. Let's remind ourselves who's in the running. The winner of the first novel prize is Francis Spufford for his book Golden Hill. It's set in the 1740s in the early days of New York. When a stranger arrives there, he finds a world of opportunity and trouble. The Biography Award went to Dadland by Kegi Carew. It follows her quest to find out more about her father's experiences in the Second World War. But she gets more than she bargained for as one by one his secrets are revealed. Falling Awake won the Poetry Award for Alice Oswald. The poems are designed to be read aloud and reflect on life, death and the power of nature, as well as Greek myths. The previous Costa Book of the Year winner Sebastian Barry took the Novel Award for Days Without End. After signing up for the American Army in the 1850s, two young men fall in love while caught up in the chaos of war. And in The Bombs That Brought Us Together, the Children's Book Award winner, written by Brian Conahan, a teenage adventure takes the spotlight. It's a tale of two friends faced with a terrible choice in a dystopian world.
Well, each of the category winners wins £5,000, with the overall winner taking home a cheque for £30,000. So there's a lot riding on this. Well, for her thoughts and insights, I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by the writer and critic Stephanie Merritt. Welcome,
Hello.
Stephanie. Let's talk about the books in a little bit more detail and start perhaps with Days Without End, Sebastian Barry's book, because he's the best-known writer on the shortlist this year. He's won this prize before. And what did you think of his book?
Well, this is really a novel of extraordinary tenderness set in a time of extraordinary brutality. It's about a love affair, a lifelong love affair almost, between two men during, first of all, the Indian Wars in the 19th century in America, and then the American Civil War. And the sights that these two men endure and the experiences that they go through are so horrific and so appalling, and yet out of that they carve a little family. They stay together and they adopt a young Indian girl who's been left without family. And it's really these little touches of domestic life in the midst of so much carnage and horror that make this such an extraordinarily moving book.
OK, I get the impression you like that one then. Let's move on to the winner of the Best Biography category. Now, that was Dadland by Kegi Carew, this race against time book by a daughter to capture the memories of her father, who had these heroic exploits during the Second World War, but he is then slipping into dementia. I suppose my first question about this is it actually a biography in the strict sense of the word, or is it more of a memoir?
Well, I think that's what's been so interesting about this particular category over the last few years, is that we've seen the winner really veering between the traditional sort of scholarly biography and very personal first-person memoirs. And this book manages to bridge both, because it is a very personal family account of a daughter's relationship with her father. But she has had to do an enormous amount of research into what went on in the Second World War, what his part in it was. So there's obviously a lot of detective work has gone on as well.
Let's move on to the poetry. This has been won by Alice Oswald for her collection, Falling Awake. Sometimes a bit more difficult for the poetry to win this award, the overall award, because they're competing against more overtly popular books. She's a very established poet, though. She's won all sorts of poetry prizes. There's no doubt these poems are beautifully written. I did wonder at times, though, how accessible they were. What did you think?
Well, I think what's interesting about Alice Oswald is that she's principally a nature poet, but she's not writing in a sort of comfortable, beautiful, pastoral tradition. She's very conscious of those nature poets who've gone before her, but she writes in a way that makes nature actually quite frightening and quite alien. And so I think there is, sometimes with these poems you do have to take a step back, and she makes you look at things in a very new and not altogether comfortable way. But there's no doubt that they are extraordinarily insightful poems, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, the first novel was won by Francis Spufford for Golden Hill. He is a very established writer. He's won prizes for his non-fiction, but this is his first attempt at fiction. How did you think he got on?
Oh, it's almost impossible to believe that this is a first novel. It's so accomplished, and it's such a glorious riot of a book. I read it in almost one sitting, I think, and it's just, there's something new happening on every page. There's never a dull moment. And he's captured that sense of the 18th century novel without ever sort of tipping into pastiche. It's a very affectionate sort of homage to clearly a genre and a period of literature that he loves.
Yes, because it's set in New York,
yes,
in the
New York.
1740s,
Yeah.
just at the beginning of New York.
Yes, and
isn't it?
it's a period that's not very well known, I think, in American history. Perhaps that very early days of the colony, and he captures it so wonderfully, but he wears his research very lightly in it.
Yeah. Finally, the children's book, which has been won by Brian Conahan for The Bombs That Brought Us Together. This prize, of course, was won by a children's book last year, The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinge. And Brian Conahan has a very interesting story behind him. He's a former painter and decorator, and he was rejected more than 200 times before he finally found a publisher. This is his third novel. What did you make of this?
Well, it's a really interesting book because its themes feel so timely. It's a book about war and occupation. It's about refugees. It's about prejudice and different cultures clashing. I think it's perhaps not necessarily the most in-depth exploration of those themes that we've seen in children's literature before, but he does it with a lightness of touch that I think will make those themes very accessible to teenage readers.
And the 14-year-old boy at the heart of the book is a very engaging character to go on the journey with, isn't he?
Yeah, and his voice feels very familiar and very easy to get along with. And I think partly what's interesting about this story is that it feels quite universal. Old country and little town, the two places where it's set, could actually be anywhere in the world at the moment.
So overall, how strong do you think the shortlist is this year?
I think it's an incredibly strong shortlist, and I think in each category chosen out of very strong shortlist. So this really is going to be a difficult one for the judges to decide. I don't envy them because it's always said this is comparing apples with oranges, but there are such good books here and such different types of writing. In each of the categories. So to pit them against one another, I think is going to be a very difficult task.
I totally agree with you. It is the old apples and oranges argument. I do wonder if their job is perhaps a little bit easier this year because so many of these books are concerned with the theme of war.
Yes, this is true, and this is very noticeable as you're looking through them. There are shared themes, certainly war and in particular race in the two novel categories. There's a lot about race and about our perceptions of race, and actually in the children's book as well, in the way that we look at people and the kind of prejudices that we carry with us. So I think there's a lot of overlap with some of the ideas in these books. That they all feel quite timely.
Yes. I'm going to put you on the spot. Which one, would you like to win, and which one do you think will win?
I think Dadland has been enormously popular, and it's been the bookies' favourite, and I can see why it's an incredibly engaging book. So I wouldn't mind at all if the bookies' predictions prove true, but I do have a special fondness for Golden Hill, which I would love to see.
Frances Spofford, really?
Prize.
Why is that?
I think because I write historical fiction, and I think it's when you see somebody doing the thing that you do so well, I can't help but admire the skill that he's brought to this recreation of this world.
Okay, well, stay with us, Stephanie. We shall see, because we're now going to head over to the award ceremony and hear from the chairman of the judges, the writer and the historian, Professor Kate Williams. So let's head over to the stage and see what she has to say and who is going to win.
Their chair, Professor Kate Williams, accompanied by Dominic Paul, Managing Director of Costa. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's so exciting to be on this stage, seeing you all here celebrating books. It's been such an incredible privilege to be chair of the judges for the Costa Book of the Year. The Costa Book Awards have celebrated for an amazing 45 years, not only authors, but also readers, editors, publishing teams, booksellers and libraries, and everyone in the book community. I think that any book is an achievement for an author, but to have written books like these that speak so universally, so magnificently, it's truly invaluable. We salute the 5 award winners and all the category shortlisted authors, and we also express our gratitude to Costa for sponsoring this wonderful prize and reminding us of the importance of books and reading. Thank you, Dominic, and your colleagues at Costa Coffee. Thank you. We live in uncertain times, times that historians will look back on, discuss endlessly, dissect, and in such times, we turn to reading. 1984 is now newly again at the top of the bestseller lists, strikingly relevant in a time when alternative facts are entering the lexicon and George Orwell's satire of the Ministry of Truth seems ever more important. For books are important because they tell us the deepest truths about who we are and the perils we face, both from outside and within ourselves. All 5 of the shortlisted books are, as you've seen, so very different in subject matter, but they explore to dazzling and superb effect the great questions that we're currently asking ourselves. What is power? What is it within us that craves dominion over others? And can we gain power but retain our humanity, be in the words of Shakespeare, those that have the power to hurt and will do none? In our new world, it's of the utmost importance that we remind ourselves and our children that technology is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't always encourage the reflection, the self-exploration that a book and books like these can bring. Social media, an excellent way of spreading the word. But there can be fake news, bubbles of facts, the immediacy of the click, the glow of the screen, all hugely addictive. And books are different. They give us a long journey, whether present, past, or future, into what it really is to be human. And in the days ahead of us, our shared humanity is, I think, the most important thing to remember. So you see us, ladies and gentlemen, fresh from exciting debate, although we did it in inflatable costumes this year with inflatable rods, a bit like It's a Knockout. That was our vision for freshening up the judges' meeting this year. So I don't know what the St James's Hotel thought we were doing, but we enjoy. I like my rod. But after a few hours of inflatable bloodshed, we, all of our judges, reached our conclusion. And or mind you, maybe we had the easy job compared to the superb category judges who reduced a list of hundreds of books submitted this year. I think they all must have very weary postmen, down just to 5. All 5 of our brilliant shortlisted books embody fantastic storytelling, each one showing us in its different way about the truths of the human heart in all its complex and intricate ways. And if you haven't read them, I urge you all to read them now, this minute, to whip them up and start reading them. But of course, there can be only one winner. Thank you again to the judges for working so hard, the authors and everyone, publishers, booksellers and literary journalists who make the world of books such a rewarding place to be. And thank you most of all to readers who give us life. And to reveal the winner, the moment we've all been waiting for, to reveal the winner, I now hand over to Dominic Paul. Thank you, Dominic.
So, the Costa Book of the Year 2016 winner is Days Without End by Sebastian Barry.
Something magical. It's in the air, it's in my blood, it's rushing on. I don't need no reason, don't need control. I fly so high, no ceiling when I'm in my zone. 'Cause I got
you nearly had the first instance of a posthumous winner. I've got such a fright. It's often said that about the short list of prizes that any of them could have won, and I think the judges would agree that on this occasion any of these amazing books could have won, leaving aside my own. I do want to thank the judges. You've made me crazy happy from the top of my head to my toes in a way that is a little bit improper at 61. Never mind. I want to thank my extraordinary editor at Faber, Angus Cargill, Kate Burton, my angel, and my ex-agent, Derek John, still the most retired, still the most eligible bachelor in London, and my new agent, Natasha Fairweather. I want to thank my wife, Ali, who knows me better than I know myself, which is barely at all. And my 3 babies now grown, Merlin and Coral, making their way in the world, and Toby, to whom this book is dedicated. And I don't know if you heard the little film, but that prayer holds good, and this book is dedicated to Toby eternally. And thank you all very, very much.
So Sebastian Barry wins the Costa Book of the Year for his 7th novel, Days Without End. And he makes a bit of prize history as well, because it's the first time that a novelist has won this prize twice in its history. He won this prize back in 2008 for his novel, The Secret Scripture. Days Without End, it's a gay love story set in the Midwest of America in the 1850s, among the battlefields of the Indian Wars and the American Civil War. It took the judges an hour and a half to reach their decision, which was unanimous, and they said that they were blown away by this book, which they said was a searing, magnificent and incredibly moving description of how the West was won. Well, I'm still joined by Stephanie Merritt, and Stephanie, your reaction first of all.
Well, I'm not wholly surprised, because it is a superb novel, and I suppose perhaps if there was any doubt about whether he would win, it was only because he'd already won, and that hasn't happened before. So it's now been proved that that can happen. It is as I said, it's an extraordinarily accomplished novel. I think what he does here that is so unusual is to create the voice of a man who is essentially uneducated, and to make it so lyrical and so very moving and so articulate.
For me, I felt what stood out about the novel was the prose. I mean, he is the most brilliant stylist, isn't he? It's beautifully written.
Well, it's written, but it is beautifully written, but it's also written in a way that doesn't feel incongruous with the character, and I think that's quite a hard act to achieve when your character is he's essentially an uneducated young man from Sligo who's run away from the famine and become a soldier, and yet he speaks in this beautifully poetic, these beautifully clear sentences, and the way he describes the landscape and the people, every sentence is a little gem, I think.
Nonetheless, it is quite a tough book, and it's very brutal and savage in its depiction of war, isn't it?
It is, and I felt, I mean, for me, the passages describing the battles are actually less interesting than the periods when they're actually living sort of between their fighting days, when they set up home together and they're trying to create this strange little version of family. We've got Thomas McNulty, the narrator, who is a very feminine young man, he's described as, and he is a female impersonator, or at least they do a stage act together, he and his partner, in which he always dresses up as the woman, but then he becomes the woman at home as well, and he wears dresses, and they adopt this young Indian girl, and they create this rather unusual little version of a family. And I think part of the idea is that because everything is so new and different in this new world, the old rules don't apply, and so they are quite accepted, it seems, by the people around them. But those are the most moving and the most affecting parts of the book, I found.
I absolutely agree with you, and I found that central love story. I mean, it's very tender, and you get caught up with them, don't you? And actually, he writes about it in quite a spare way, doesn't he?
He does, and it's also, he conveys all the sort of moral ambiguities of these wars that are going on. You know, that nobody is clear-cut, good or bad. You know, there's the Major, who is a very noble character early on, but has his flaws, we discover later on. There are his fellow soldiers, some of whom are just mercenaries and are only fighting to put food on the table. They have no idea what principle they're fighting for in the Civil War. And, and then there's such a difference of the way that people's allegiances shift, and the way that loyalty is tested through these different fights that he and John go through, but their loyalty to each other remains steadfast. And it's an incredibly warm and uplifting book, despite the horror that goes on around them.
Yes, absolutely. One of the criticisms that has been levelled against the book is that at times it does stretch credulity. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
Well, I think what people mean by that, perhaps, is that the central love story might feel a little anachronistic. But actually, I think, I mean, he's a novelist who will certainly have done his research. And in these early days of the settlers in the 19th century, when there was such a lack of women, you know, I think there was, my understanding is that there was a great deal more freedom and perhaps tacit acceptance of gay relationships than we might imagine. And so I think, you know, perhaps there is a sense that the idea that these two men would be allowed to get on with their relationship unbothered by the people around them, it feels a little bit as if we might be testing the bounds of credulity, but it is.
Well, we are joined now, I'm delighted to say, Stephanie Merritt, thank you very much, but we are joined now by the winner of the Costa Book of the Year, Sebastian Barry. Sebastian, lovely to see you. You're live on BBC television.
Well,
I should just warn you that.
I won't panic.
No, many congratulations.
Thank you.
How surprised are you?
I was completely gobsmacked, if you're familiar with that good Irish word. There's a word I tried to get back into usage in the book, which means the bee's knees, and it's the sockdologer. That was the sockdologer of amazing outcomes, I have to say.
Now, your book, Days Without End, it's a gay love story set against the battlefields of America in the Midwest in the 1850s. What was the inspiration for the novel?
Well, my beautiful and incredible son, Toby, who came out when he was 16 in Ireland, in a rural part of Ireland, and has spent the last few years giving me a university training in what it means to be gay, and opened my eyes to this wondrous condition of being. And I thought in the book, if I could go back to a time in America, despite the great maelstrom of the nation being born, if I could find this place where a man could love another lad and not be bothered with it by other people and just have their lives and progress in their lives, then I was making a little secret prayer, put it into the future, where somebody as immaculate as my boy would never have to be bothered by prejudice or the comments of the ignorant. Because I did conclude it was a magnificent state of being. So in the book I'm trying to describe their love in a sort of unremarkable way, because it's a normal and natural part of being a human creature.
You've dedicated the book to Toby. I wondered, what did he think of it when he read it?
It took ages to read it. None of my children read my books.
No,
because,
really?
Well, they just want me to be stupid old dad, driving them around like a taxi man and buying them shoes when they need them. So, and I understand all that, but I did feel he should read it. He did read it, and he said quietly to me a couple of months ago, he said, Dad, two things. He said, first, you're not gay, but you're an ally. And then he said, and I like your book. And those three words were precious and wonderful to me.
You've won this prize before.
I have.
What's it like second time around?
Unprecedented. I can't describe to you, because I was perfectly content to stand back and applaud Francis or any of the other wonderful people on the short list. I just can't quite get over it. I may never get over it.
Well, look, we're so delighted for you. Just one other question. I know you said it was dedicated and inspired by Toby, but am I right, your grandfather also played a part in this book?
I had an amazing, rather discredited man in his actual days without end in his own life, but when he was older, he stopped drinking and became my beautiful friend, you could say, and kind of rescued me as a little boy. We shared a room, and one night, in the bed together, he was telling me stories about the Hindu Kush, whatever, because he was a major in the British Army. And he's just said in passing that your great-uncle or great-great-uncle was at the Indian Wars. And I thought, of course, I knew what that was, because I'd seen all the cowboy films, but it's taken me 50 more years to try and understand really what that would be for an Irish person in America, in a sense dispossessing and destroying a people, the Native Americans, not unlike the Irish themselves, really.
Sebastian Barry, many congratulations. Go and enjoy your evening. Thank you for talking to us here on BBC News. And there you have it. The winner of the Costa Book of the Year is Days Without End by Sebastian Barry.
Rebecca, many thanks for that. Rebecca Jones there in Central.